There comes a moment in every life when silence becomes too heavy to bear. At 61, Melissa Gilbert reached that moment. The girl the world once knew as Half-Pint, the freckled face that symbolized innocence, resilience, and heart, finally chose to speak her truth. And this time, it wasn't about nostalgia or fame. It was about something deeper, more human. It was about the price of surviving in a world that only loves you when you smile. And the woman whose pain had once mirrored her own, Patty Duke. For decades, Melissa had been the face of the perfect American childhood, a symbol of family values and hope. But what the public never saw were the shadows behind the glow. Like Patty Duke, Melissa knew how it felt to live a life written by others, to be adored by millions yet quietly breaking inside. And at 61, she no longer wanted to pretend. She wanted to tell the truth, not to rewrite her story, but to reclaim it. Her journey began, appropriately, under Hollywood's unrelenting sun. Born in Los Angeles on May 8, 1964, Melissa Ellen Gilbert was placed in the arms of her adoptive parents, actor and comedian Paul Gilbert and his wife Barbara Crane. Their home was filled with laughter and art, but also expectation. Show business wasn't just a dream in the Gilbert household, it was a family trade. Scripts lay scattered across the kitchen table. Stage lights replaced nightlights. And before Melissa even understood what fame meant, she was already being prepared to live inside it. Her early childhood was a paradox. On one hand, it was filled with creativity and opportunity. On the other, it carried an invisible weight. Her father's humor filled rooms, but there were nights when the laughter seemed forced, when the exhaustion behind the smiles was unmistakable. The entertainment world offered glamour, but not gentleness. And though Melissa didn't yet have the words for it, she was learning early how fragile the line between joy and performance could be. She started working almost as soon as she could speak. Commercials, small parts, endless auditions. Her natural charisma made casting directors take notice. She wasn't polished. She was real. And that authenticity, that spark of truth in her eyes would become her signature. But childhood in Hollywood isn't a fairy tale. It's a delicate dance between innocence and image, and not every child survives it intact. Melissa was lucky, or maybe just strong enough to hold on to who she was. That strength carried her to the role that would define her forever. Laura Ingalls Wilder. When she walked into the audition for Little House on the Prairie, she had no idea the world was about to change. Michael Landon, the show's creator and star, saw her and instantly knew. "She's the one," he said. "She is Laura." And from that moment on, the 9-year-old girl with the big brown eyes became America's sweetheart. The show debuted in 1974, and overnight it became more than television. It was a lifeline for families. Through stories of hardship and love, the Ingalls family reminded a weary nation what togetherness really meant. And Melissa's performance as Laura, honest, emotional, and utterly human, anchored it all. Her laughter, her tears, her courage, none of it felt acted. It felt lived. Michael Landon took her under his wing, becoming the father figure she would carry in her heart long after he was gone. Their relationship wasn't just professional, it was profoundly personal. He taught her to believe in herself, to lead with compassion, to never lose her heart in an industry that thrives on breaking them. But even with his guidance, fame was a fragile gift. Behind every smile was exhaustion. Behind every fan letter, the quiet ache of isolation. She was America's little girl, but she belonged to everyone but herself. There were no sleepovers, no teenage mischief, no privacy. Her life was measured in ratings, scripts, and contracts. And though millions saw her as a symbol of simplicity and love, the truth was more complicated. Like Patty Duke before her, Melissa was learning that being adored is not the same as being understood. When Little House on the Prairie ended in 1983, the silence that followed was deafening. For the first time since childhood, Melissa stood alone. No camera, no script, no character to hide behind. And that's when she discovered something terrifying. She didn't know who she was without the applause. Her search for identity led her into new roles, darker, more demanding, more adult. And in 1979, still a teenager, she found herself on the set of The Miracle Worker. It would be a turning point, not just in her career, but in her understanding of what it meant to act and to feel. Melissa was cast as Helen Keller, a role that demanded physical and emotional intensity. Opposite her stood Patty Duke, playing Anne Sullivan, the same role that had catapulted Duke to stardom in 1962. For Melissa, working with Patty was like standing next to a thunderstorm, electric, unpredictable, mesmerizing. Patty Duke didn't just perform, she became. Every glance, every word, every moment carried the weight of her soul. Melissa was in awe, yet there was something haunting behind Duke's brilliance. At times, she was radiant, other times withdrawn. She could light up a set or disappear into silence. The crew whispered about her moods, her intensity, her demons. But to Melissa, she was a teacher. Watching Patty work was like looking into the future, a glimpse of what it might mean to live for your art, even if it consumes you. At the time, Melissa didn't understand what drove that intensity. She was too young to see the battle beneath the surface. Years later, when Patty Duke publicly revealed her struggles with bipolar disorder, Melissa finally understood. All the energy, all the unpredictability, all the fire, it wasn't just performance. It was survival. That realization hit Melissa hard because by then, she'd lived through her own share of storms. As she grew older, the shine of fame dimmed, replaced by the reality of adulthood, heartbreak, addiction, disappointment. She tried to build a normal life, but normal had never been part of her script. Her first marriage to actor Beau Brinkman brought passion and chaos in equal measure. They had a son, Dakota, in 1989, but 6 years later, their marriage collapsed under the weight of unspoken pain. Her second marriage, to actor Bruce Boxleitner, lasted longer, 16 years of love, work, and compromise. Together, they had a son, Michael, named for the man who once taught her what family truly meant. But even that bond couldn't survive forever. By 2011, they too had drifted apart, leaving Melissa with the quiet ache of starting over again. And yet, she never stopped fighting. Even in her lowest moments, there was a stubborn flame inside her. The same spark that had once carried her across the prairie in spirit, if not in body. It led her not only back to acting, but to leadership. In 2001, she became president of the Screen Actors Guild, a role that demanded resilience, courage, and empathy. For 4 years, she fought tirelessly for fair wages, healthcare, and better protections for performers. It was grueling, political, and often thankless, but it mattered. Because for the first time, she wasn't just protecting her career, she was protecting others. Her transformation deepened further when she turned to writing. Her 2009 memoir, Prairie Tale, stripped away every illusion the public ever held about her. In it, she spoke openly about her addictions, her insecurities, her heartbreaks, and the price of fame. It wasn't scandalous, it was honest. And in that honesty, she found healing. Like Patty Duke before her, she realized that transparency could be a form of salvation. Patty Duke had done the same years earlier, standing before the world to admit her mental health battles at a time when few dared speak of them. She gave people permission to stop hiding, and in doing so, she gave Melissa courage. I looked at Patty's life and thought, Melissa later said, if she can survive what she's been through and still find peace, maybe I can too. That revelation changed everything. In 2013, Melissa married actor and director Timothy Busfield, her final and perhaps most fateful love story. Unlike her previous relationships, this one wasn't built on Hollywood glamour. It was built on quiet understanding. Two artists, both scarred and wise, choosing peace over performance. Their wedding in Santa Barbara was small, intimate, and filled with sincerity, a world away from the flashbulbs and headlines. And when they moved to the small town of Howell, Michigan, they found something Melissa had never known before: stillness. The woman who had once lived by scripts and studio schedules now spent her days painting walls, planting gardens, and renovating an old Victorian home. She described it as a labor of love and a kind of therapy. There were no red carpets, no photo shoots, just the hum of normal life. And in that quiet, Melissa rediscovered herself. For the first time, she wasn't performing, she was living. By the time she turned 61, Melissa had come full circle, from child star to survivor, from Hollywood's golden girl to truth teller. And that's when she finally spoke about Patty Duke. Her words were tender, reflective, and full of gratitude. "She was one of the most fearless actresses I've ever seen," Melissa said. "She could turn pain into poetry." But more importantly, she spoke of Duke's humanity. "She wasn't just an icon," she added. "She was a woman who wanted love and peace, just like the rest of us." For Melissa, Patty wasn't just a co-star from decades ago. She was a mirror, a reminder of what happens when the world confuses talent for invincibility. Duke's openness about her struggles inspired Melissa to embrace her own imperfections. To admit that being strong doesn't mean never falling apart, it means learning how to rise again. And perhaps that's the legacy both women share, the courage to speak when silence would have been easier. Patty Duke taught the world that it's okay to not be okay. Melissa Gilbert carried that torch forward, showing that healing doesn't come from pretending you're fine, it comes from admitting when you're not. Today she lives that truth. After leaving Michigan, she and Busfield moved to New York City, not for fame but for inspiration. Surrounded by art, theater, and life's constant motion, she feels alive again, but this time on her own terms. She continues to write, to advocate, and to remind others that the world behind the screen is rarely as perfect as it looks. When she finally told her truth about Patty Duke, it wasn't an exposé. It was an act of love. A tribute to a woman who fought her demons and dared to live authentically. And through that honesty, Melissa freed herself too. Because the truth, no matter how long it takes to tell, always brings light. "If there's anything I've learned," she said softly, "it's that our struggles don't define us, they shape us. And if we can find the courage to share them, maybe we can help someone else feel less alone." And that's what makes Melissa Gilbert's story so powerful. It's not just about fame or legacy. It's about what it means to be human in a world that forgets stars are people too. Like Patty Duke before her, she has learned that vulnerability is strength, and honesty, even when it hurts, is the only way to truly heal. From the dusty prairies of a television set to the quiet rooms of her restored Victorian home, Melissa has traveled farther than most, not in miles but in meaning. She has lived 1,000 lives in one, and at 61 she stands not as a relic of Hollywood's past, but as proof that truth always finds its voice, no matter how long it waits. Because in the end, fame fades. Awards tarnish. Photographs blur. But honesty, the kind that takes decades to find, lives forever. And when Melissa Gilbert finally spoke it aloud, the world listened. Because somewhere between the little girl she was and the woman she became, she found the courage to tell the story not just of her own survival, but of every soul who ever dared to turn pain into purpose.